We are now joined by Owen Mc Cree, the Managing Director of the Compliance Group. Thank you, Owen, for sharing a few of your minutes with us.
Great being here.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation this morning, which was focused on multiple fatality investigation and findings. There's a couple of questions that I've drawn up here, which maybe you can help me with shedding a little bit more light on, specifically, or focusing on specifically the investigations, and maybe also assisting some of the aspiring health and safety officers out there, whether they're working in the mines or working in a shop or in an office, to maybe be a little bit more effective when it comes to investigations and risk control and risk management, if you don't mind.
Great.
So the first one, in terms of risk management and control, how can safety professionals obtain or learn to have the right view, it's something that you mentioned a few times, in terms of incidents, accidents, and the various consequences that come with them?
So there's obviously nothing can beat experience, but everybody has to start with the academic trail. So there's obviously the courses with different service providers. But I have found throughout the years that nothing beats the experience. But that experience also needs to be sought after with intent. There's a difference between gaining experience sitting in the same occupation for 5 or 10 years and saying you've now completed 5 or 10 years in this role, this is what you've learned. You have to actively aim and work and set goals and strive to learn during those 10 years.
Right.
What I found is if you start superimposing data, not only using risk assessment in isolation, but really looking at risk assessment, looking where the procedures talk to risk assessments, having a look at compliance, the reasons for non-compliance, implementing processes like the leadership diagnostic from the Skaitema group, looking at, do you have the means to do your job? If you have the means to do your job, do you have the ability to do your job? And if you have both the means and the ability, I hold you either positively or negatively accountable. It's as simple as that. If one of those two are not met, the level goes up. Mr. Supervisor, why does your people not have, or why do your people not have the budget to do this? Or were they not trained to do this? Taking that data, looking at accident investigation reports, as I mentioned, whether it's ICAT, RCAT, SCAT, ICAM, fishbone, bowtie, doesn't matter. Taking that information, putting it onto the humanistic portion, putting that onto the systemic portion, putting that onto the action management portion, onto the strategy, and really taking all of this into consideration contextually.
Right.
And then see whether if you implement these things and you stand in a dark room alone with your hand on your heart, if you fully implement all of these actions, are you comfortable that you will not have a repeat of this incident? Not only in that section, but at that operation or anywhere in the business. And that is where the can of worms is opened up.
Right.
And that's where the real experience comes in, to say, this is how I now evolve in terms of accident investigation. This is how I evolve in terms of risk management. To really see in context how things fit together. The whole older Swiss cheese model, still with all your defenses, it's still applicable, but the context needs to be understood.
Right.
That there's more than one thing that works together. However, saying that, and I don't want to elaborate on the question now, but
No, please do.
you often get significant safety achievements. We've achieved 1 million, 2 million, 3 million fatality-free shifts. Have an honest discussion with that leader and say, explain to me how you did this. And you will often get a grey or a vague answer, or you will even get a committed answer to say, it's the effort of the team, it's a collaboration, and it's a culmination of all the efforts. The moment you hear something like that, it is code for I don't know. You have to be able to say, my name is Owen, I'm an alcoholic, this is my problem. So you have to establish a baseline of where you are at your operation. You then have to develop a strategy and tactics, executable and effective actions. And you need to say, these actions are going to take me from this state to this state. Once those actions have been implemented, you evaluate whether the actions brought you to the state where you wanted to be. If that state is then 1 million, 2 million, 3 million fatality-free shifts, an injury-free day, white flag day, if you can tangibly show me from where you have been, what you've done, and that what you've done met what you anticipated or planned it to do, and you've now achieved this result, I'll tell you, you're on a journey to grow, to continual improvement. But if you have no tangible evidence to move up the success ladder, it's luck. It's as simple as that. It might sound arrogant. If you do not have the building blocks to get to the roof, it'll collapse.
Right. In the same sense, my next question then is, why do we then see these cases where, if we consider the incidents and accidents that are happening, and you've mentioned it in your presentation as well, that there's a lot more attention or a bigger focus on the multiple fatality incidents rather than the initial incidents or smaller incidents, or even just small incidents that didn't result in any real consequences. Why is it such a sensation if 13 people get killed? But nobody hears about the cases where 1 or 2 people may have been harmed, even not killed at all. And how do we change that way of thinking about workplace safety?
I think a lot of it lies, once again, in the maturity of an industry. When you take into consideration that whether it's the Department of Labor, whether it's the Department of Minerals, whether it's the Department of Environmental, all these departments, as mentioned in the presentations, is a public service department. So when you have 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, whether it's a bus, whether it's a mine fatality, whether it's a construction or a collapse of a building, the community is significantly or affected significantly by a loss of 10 or 15 or 20 providers. I mean, the discussion that Alan had, one person looking after a wife or multiple spouses, multiple children.
Yeah.
So obviously one person's impact in the community is significant, but losing 10 or 13 or 20 people in a community makes a difference.
Right.
The moment that impact is felt at that level in the community will automatically apply pressure to the public service domain to say, do something about this. And they need feedback. And as you can see on every news channel, the moment a lot of people get together for the same reason with boards and protesting, everybody jumps into action. And everybody expects action and reaction.
Right.
Everybody wants answers. And the more this grows, people want to know, so what's going on there? So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a view purely from an employer perspective that one person's death is worth less than 10 or 15 people.
Not as important.
It's not that that's the industry's view, but unfortunately, the reality of it is that there's a significant impact in the community. And the community react to a public service entity, and the public service entity has to respond to these things. The law book, or any law book in terms of occupational health and safety, whether it's OSH Act, Mine Health and Safety Act, these acts have been written in blood. People have died
Literally.
for that governance to be there.
Right.
And you know, the communities engage and towns and cities and rural areas, it doesn't matter. Wherever those people were living is impacted. And those people want answers. They want to know what is going to be done in terms of this. And I think that's the Achilles heel of the real multiple fatal versus single fatal kind of discussion.
Right. And then in that as well, and it relates to my next question, is getting the employer and obviously everybody else that's involved as well, because I do think even the employees need to understand that, yes, we do certain things a certain way, we apply certain control measures so that we can stay away from certain consequences. But something that you mentioned this morning was the mechanism with regards to the incident itself, understanding how it happens, what was involved, who are the different role players. How do we get people to shift their view away from simply trying not to get hurt towards making sure that I understand that if I do certain things, then I won't get hurt? So there's a large focus on the consequences, right? I'm applying occupational health and safety to be compliant so that I don't get fines from the Department of Labor. I'm applying health and safety so that I don't lose a tender. I'm doing health and safety so that maybe my employees feel valued. So from a culture perspective, it looks good so we can push production up. Why don't we focus on the mechanisms? Is this a new thing? Is this something that just isn't culturally available in the way of thinking about health and safety?
So, in the mining industry, throughout the last couple of years, actually, there's a large focus and drive on that. If you're familiar with, for example, the bow tie analysis, where
Right.
they put the incident in the middle and they look at what is the preceding events and what controls do I have in place. Those controls try and look at all these things in front of it. Part of that control, and one of the mines is actually doing this beautifully, is now nurturing and growing the humanistic portion. And I think the humanistic element in safety management has always been there in terms of behavior and at-risk behavior and behavior campaigns and culture campaigns and those things. But when we talk about a humanistic engagement, we are in the mining industry, we're starting now to move over from the typical neocortex data. Here's the stats, here's the hazards, here's the risks, you must bar, you must lock out. It's all neocortex info. And the humanistic approach focuses on the limbic brain. And it starts looking at feel. We discussed this morning very briefly the whole new woke generation is driven by feel. I
Right.
feel this way, I feel that way. And we need to start moving faster with the humanistic approach throughout the mining industry for that person to really understand feeling-wise, not information-wise. We've been flooding them with talk topics every week and every month. We have toolbox talks, we have JSAs, we have all of this. The fatalities in the mining industry have decreased significantly in the last 15, 20 years. But what you will notice is a flattening out of that graph. Now, when you do business studies, it shows you that S curve. And
Right.
every time you reach the top, you need to do that. So we are now inverted on that. So the fatals have now, it's now starting to dwindle into a flat. It requires something else.
Yes.
That something else is the paradigm shift from systemic and transactional safety to humanistic safety.
Right.
We can keep on blaming people. We can keep on saying, yeah, it's the behavior of the people. We can keep on driving discipline. Not that there's no place for it. There's
Yeah.
obviously place for discipline. I just mentioned the leadership diagnostic concept from Skatema. Do you have the means? Yes. Do you have the ability? Yes. You've done a good job. I hold you positively accountable by virtue of incentive schemes, bonuses, all those things. Or I hold you negatively accountable if you didn't do it.
Yes. Yes.
So there is still place for discipline, but there's a whole humanistic approach that needs to be explored before we get to discipline. The same way we have to go to elimination, substitution, engineering controls, admin controls, and then reach PPE.
Right.
We need to go through strategy, tactics, training, risk assessment, what, transactional, systemic, humanistic, before we get to the disciplinary
Right.
process. And I think that is not necessarily uncharted waters, but we've skimmed the surface with a behavior program and at-risk behavior programs and good behavior, bad behavior, critical behaviors, culture programs. We're getting into that, but we need to delve deeper into the humanistic
Right.
elements of each of our workers.
Right.
And we need to understand that. And people kind of say, yes, but how do I demonstrate care to 4,500 people? You know, that's typically the next question. And the flaw in that lies in how you see the question. Because my question to you is, okay, so define care at a minimum level for me. Care does not mean I know the names of all 150 people in my crew, know their wives' names, know where their kids are going to school, and have a braai with them every second week. That's not what care means. Care at a basic level is typical to you standing at the traffic light, and you wait to cross, and the little man turns green, but there's still a car approaching. And the person next to you sees the green light, they start walking. And you say, oh, wait.
Yeah.
You know that person from nowhere. They're nowhere in your life. You've never seen them before. But just that, wait, here's a car. That is care.
Yes.
at the most basic level. If we can do that within our workplace, we will already have made a quantum leap in terms of getting into the limbic and getting into the humanistic side of people.
I agree. I agree. I mean, it's probably one of the most basic fundamentals that myself and Alan discussed as well. Is if you care about people, you'll be willing to do something.
Yes.
It's not just about complying.
Absolutely.
Compliance is the outcome, for me at least.
Yes.
If you care, you will take action. And that now brings me to my last question. If you had some advice for any of the aspiring safety officers out there still completing their studies, what would it be?
Complete your studies will be the first thing. But accept, like in Game of Thrones, you know nothing, Jon Snow. It's like getting your driver's license.
Right.
You start learning how to drive once you have your license, not before.
Yes.
So you're going to have the fundamental data, academics, structuring in order to engage now in the working place that you're in. But accept that you know nothing and start from there. Question everything. Match and try column A, column B with everything. Whether it's a talk topic versus your strategy. There we just had a discussion from Kate this morning where there needs to be content connection between your critical or fatal risk control protocols or ICMM best practices, right down to your risk assessment, even if it's baseline issue-based continuous checklists, doesn't matter. That list needs to be there. So compare everything. Have a look at, these are my required outputs, legally, operationally, for the stakeholders, for the strategy, for the community. These are my outputs. What systems do I have to use to generate these outputs? Meaning, what inputs do I need for my system to generate these outputs? And anything that doesn't flow needs to be removed out of your life. That would be my ultimate advice, is finish your qualifications, whatever it might be. BTEC, NATSAM, courses from wherever, courses from Australia, NEBOSH, it doesn't matter. Take your pick. But accept that you know nothing.
Right.
And now step into your working place and absorb everything.
Yes.
Understand that you're working with people. Understand that there are rules. Make sure you understand why the rules are there. If at any point any organization would focus as much on their top 5 risks as they focus on the issue of women wearing high-heeled shoes in office blocks, we would have so much less issues in terms of reportables and LTIs. Check this morning, an entire legal discussion about high-heeled shoes. The effort, we're reaching high courts because of high-heeled shoes. You're serious.
Yeah.
But we have falls of ground, we have gassings, we have this, we have that, we have construction failures, we have buses driving off roads into rivers. But we're at a high court for high-heel shoes.
Yes.
So
it goes to show.
In conclusion, absorb everything, assume you know nothing, compare everything, and make sure you start with the end in mind. So this is our strategy. Why is it our strategy? Where are we now? How long is it going to take us to get there? Do we have tangible actions to get there? Are we actually executing these tangible actions? Are we monitoring them? When we report on progress, do we allow a manager to say, we are now at 10%, and next week to say, we are now at 20%? Or do we ask him, demonstrate tangibly how you've moved from 10 to 20% progress on this action? You have to remove that gray area. Gray area in safety doesn't exist.
Yeah.
A gray area is a concept developed by people who don't have the spine to make a decision.
Right.
Safety is 0 or 1. And I need to add that the humanistic portion may be a 0.5, but it's because of our exposure and our experience in dealing with this. We need to get it to a 1.
Yes.
So yeah, that's my advice for any aspiring safety professional, is dig into it with intent.
Yeah.
Don't get the qualification, you now get the salary, you're now legally appointed for this area. We're compliant, cool. Visit the contractors meeting, cool. Winning has a different meaning for every person. Unfortunately, winning and losing in safety is the difference between sending people home in their vehicles
Or in
a
coffins.
or in a coffin. So you don't have that
luxury.
that luxury
Yes.
in our industry.
Right. Thank you so much for your time. And again, thank you for your presentation this morning. We really, really enjoyed it.
Great stuff. Thanks.
That's so.